Welcome to Real Talk Thursdays, where we talk about everything from real estate and in between. I am Shani Vardy, and I am so excited to introduce my very first guest. She is an incredible and the most sharpest person I have had the privilege to know. Um, she has been selling the dream since 2007, and her success comes naturally as she possesses a rare blend of intuition, foresight, and a deep understanding of the real estate market, particularly in Forsyth County, where she has resided for the past 2 decades. She has built an exceptional business with a clientele base where 90% are repeat clients and referrals. She's a devoted wife, an incredible mom of 2, and a fur mom to 3 sweet fur babies. I am so honored to welcome the amazing Toni Roberts.
Oh, thank you, Shani. I'm excited to be here and, live up to that introduction.
Well, thank you for being here, my first guest. So
Yeah,
I
I'm
appreciate
excited.
that. So tell me, we have many things in common, but one thing we have in common is that we're both born in South Africa.
That is correct.
So when did you move here? Why Atlanta?
Yeah, so I moved here in 1996. I actually came over as an au pair, so an exchange program that, I thought, gosh, what better way to explore the US than to come over on this cultural exchange program. My goal was to be here for a year and then to meet my brother in Europe and to backpack through Europe for 2 or 3 years and then to head home and, start my real life.
Wow.
Well, 27 years later, I never made it to Europe to backpack.
Wow. So you ended up staying here. So you came here for a year, you au paired.
Yes.
You never went back.
I did not go back. Well, I've been back.
Well, you've been back, but you didn't go back home.
No, I fell in love with Atlanta. I fell in love with the South. And 27 years later, I'm still here and love it just as much today as when I stepped foot in 1996.
That is phenomenal. My question to you is, coming from another country, and this is related to real estate, do you think that contributes to a broader perspective when meeting clients?
Absolutely. I think that, having lived in another country and experiencing, what life was like there, what real estate is like there, what the homes are like there, because as you know, it is very, very different than it is here. It's given me the ability to, share that experience and share some perspective. And I do think that it has, been something that has served me well in working with my clients over the years.
I mean, I think so, because you have this worldly perspective. You've seen people in different walks of life.
Absolutely. And it's very different, living in South Africa and just, the type of environment is very, very different than here in the States. So it is, I do feel like it's been beneficial for me. And when I go home to visit, it does certainly make me appreciate what I have here as well.
Yeah. And so you've been a real estate agent here since 2017.
Yes.
You've been through many, many transactions.
Yes, it's funny. I actually was looking at some reviews that clients have left me over the years a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And I had never counted how many transactions I had done because I don't really look at it as a number of transactions. Right. I look at it as, relationships and, homes that I have helped people to purchase or sell for, different reasons, starting different chapters. And, I did see that number and it was a little surprising to me, what that count was. And I was like, gosh, I have helped this many people make a difference because from being in
Yeah.
real estate, there are so many different reasons that people want to sell. Some are good reasons and some are not so great
No.
reasons,
And those are the tough ones.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Especially when somebody doesn't want to sell, but they have to sell. And,
Yeah.
I saw that number and I just thought of it as, gosh, these are all the people that have now come into my life that have honestly, been an extension of my circle and my friends and my family.
But that's also a reflection of who you are and who you attract. And clearly, we know why they're coming to you.
Oh,
It's
well,
really
you are very
clear.
kind.
I mean, you look at that number and you're like, wow, I helped all those families, but all those families, they chose you.
Yes. And I think the part for me that is the most rewarding is when those families choose me again,
Yeah.
or when those families refer me to their friends or
Yeah.
their neighbors. That to me is the highest compliment that I can ever receive.
It is definitely a huge compliment. It's almost like it takes your breath away because you go through this transaction, you come out of it, and you don't really think much of it. But you're done. You got that person in a home, or you sold their home, whatever it is. But that person is holding you to, in their highest regard.
Yeah.
So, I feel that when we meet people, it's not about leaving them with words or looks or this. I think when we leave someone with that feeling is with them forever. So it's about how we make people feel.
100%. And that is, kind of one of the core objectives of my real estate business and why I got into real estate. I don't want people to remember the $30,000 that we got over list price or the $20,000 that we negotiated in closing costs.
I'm sure they'll always remember that though.
Well, hopefully. I think they forget sometimes though. Yeah. But I do want them to remember, how they felt through that transaction. Part of the reason, and I haven't shared this with many people, but part of the reason I got into real estate was, my husband and I was selling a home. It was actually the very first home that we had ever purchased together. We bought this house when it was dirt. So we bought it from a builder. Back then we did not.
And where was the house?
This was in Cumming.
Okay.
This was our very, very first house in Cumming. And, so we knew nothing. We had my husband's family, his parents coming and seeing the house and, seeing the different stages and them giving us advice.
Yeah.
But we really knew nothing. We had never sold a house. So after being in this house for 12 years, we decided we needed to sell the house. We needed something bigger. We wanted to be, in an area where, our kids could, go ride on their bikes.
Well, the kids were growing up now at this point.
And they were a lot younger. So we had been in this house for 12 years. We bought it before we got married. We bought it before we had kids. And our experience selling this home and purchasing our next home was the entire reason that I got into real estate. There was some balls that were dropped. And,
So you hired a real estate agent for that transaction?
We did hire a real estate agent. It was somebody that, had a very high track record of selling homes, in our neighborhood. And there was some balls that were dropped and we ended up not being able to do a back-to-back closing. And so for people that have done that back-to-back closing, it is a very stressful transaction. Yeah. And it is not always easy to line those two up. Yeah. And in this situation, some balls were dropped and we closed on the one house and we're now homeless. We were under contract on the other home, but things got pushed out.
Right.
And so we had to move our family of 4 into a hotel room for 3 weeks.
These are like nightmare.
Yes.
Yeah. And the fact that this is a personal.
Yes. And then we had to board. At the time, we only had one dog. So we had to board our dog for 3 weeks. Oh my God. My kids were still in elementary school. So it was having to get up in the morning. My husband there was one bathroom in this hotel room that we had to live in for 3 weeks. And as glamorous as it sounds, living in a hotel room, it was not that kind of hotel. So it was tough, figuring out how to make
Yeah.
lunches for your kids, getting them to school on
And
time.
this all kind of happened because the ball was dropped somewhere along the line,
The ball was dropped along the
and
line.
that affected you obviously in a
Yes.
huge way, not just you, the entire
We
family.
always knew that there was going to be like a period of 1 week where we weren't going to go from the
Okay.
one house to the other. We knew that early
Yeah.
along in the process, and we accepted that, and we planned for the 1 week. But you put 4 people in a hotel room for 3 weeks. I'm surprised we all came out
Yeah, in one
alive
piece.
and
Yeah.
in one piece. Yes. So it was
Yeah.
challenging. And so, I said to my husband, if we ever do this again, I am going to get my real estate license because I want to control the process. I don't
Okay.
ever want to be left in this very vulnerable position, because even up until like the day that we closed,
Yeah.
there was that feeling of unsurety. We just hadn't been communicated.
It's just the worst
And
feeling.
it was horrible. And I said to him, I'm never going to let this happen to our family again.
Yeah.
We did close on the one house, but until you close on the next home,
Yeah.
that feeling, because anything can happen, as you know.
Anything can happen, but I mean, if balls are dropped that are balls that are not in your control, okay, things happen. But if someone is not doing their job and balls are dropped, puts people in a bad position. So you ended up getting your real estate license, and you wanted to make sure other families wouldn't go through what you went through, and I think that's huge.
100%. And when I look at what I want my clients to remember is the feeling that somebody, and that somebody is me, cares about them.
Yeah.
I have housed people's U-Haul trucks in my driveway.
I thought you were going to say like house dogs and.
Well, I have.
Yeah.
I have offered to take in dogs.
Yeah.
I have babysat kids.
Yeah.
I have helped my clients pack. I've helped my clients move.
We wear many hats.
Yes, because I want them to remember when I'm sitting there meeting with them and we are going through that initial, consultation, where they're determining whether they want to hire me or not.
Yeah.
I promise them that I'm going to make this as stress-free and smooth as possible, and I'm going to treat them like I would treat my family, and I want to put my money where my mouth is.
You are really such an incredible person. Like, just by meeting you, you don't even have to tell me these stories, and I already know, like, I'm in good hands. I mean, like, I'm a real estate agent, but like, I want to hire you. To sell my house.
Let's go sell your house right now.
You're really an incredible agent, and it really shines through. So you mentioned a story about yourself. Was there what was I would say your most toughest transaction? Representing someone else.
Yeah. Obviously, as we go through, our careers as realtors, there's many transactions, and there's, a handful that I can think of that were tougher than others.
And it's funny because we forget about the tough ones. You like go through it and you come out of it. And
you almost feel guilty if you have a transaction that is too smooth to sound like it actually is real. I always feel guilty if there wasn't a hiccup. I'm like, wait a minute, like, why wasn't there a hiccup?
Oh, no, I'm happy about those ones.
I'm happy because
they're very few and far between.
But I almost I almost start thinking like, is this a dream?
Is there something coming?
Yeah, exactly. But I think for me, one of my toughest transactions was about 2.5 years ago. I had this young couple that came to me. They had been renting an apartment and had turned in their lease, and they decided that they were going to use a program called Buy-More. And so at the time, I was one of the referral agents for the program. Yeah. And they had, already started looking at homes before they met me. My role in this partnership was once somebody was ready to put an offer in on a home, I would step in and then I would write the offer.
Okay.
And I would go ahead and kind of take them to the finish line. And so they came to me, they'd already been looking at homes. They had already turned their notice in at their apartment
and
complex.
there's other people showing them homes.
Yes.
Like multiple people, someone new at the door every time
Yes.
they wanted to go see. So it wasn't this like personal relationship with whoever was opening
Yes.
the door for them. Okay.
Pretty much. So they would go online and they would schedule the appointment and then somebody would meet them there. And you're right, it was a different person each time. That person really was just a door opener.
Okay.
They couldn't point things out about the house. They could not advise them because they were not their agent.
Okay.
So I met them and, we drafted a buyer brokerage agreement, meaning I could now advise them.
Right.
And so we started writing offers. So this was in the height of the 2020, 2021 market where
the good old days.
Things went, yeah, exactly. Where things were a little crazy.
Yes.
And, my clients were first-time home buyers,
Okay.
super, super sweet couple, and did not have a huge budget. The price point that they were looking in was the same price point that every single starter buyer in the market was looking at. So we wrote offer after offer after offer. And finally, we wrote an offer on this property. We actually didn't get it, but I advised my clients for us to start writing backup offers because nothing was sticking.
And a lot of agents don't do that. I've had many deals.
I have had many deals too where we have not been the primary, we have been the second or even the third backup offer. So I started to encourage them to write backup offers.
Okay.
They did not have a lot of money. They could not pay over list price. And that was where we kept losing out on these offers. So I get a call from the agent and she's like, our buyer terminated. Your client is, they are now in primary.
Yeah.
And so I was thrilled. So I called my clients. They were so excited. They were over the moon, as they should be.
Of course.
Because we had been waiting. It was probably like a good 7 days between when we had become the backup to when we became primary. So we get through inspections. There was a few things that we needed to negotiate. The seller was pretty easy to work with. Everything is going good. All of a sudden, I get a call from my buyer and she is distraught. The lender is not responding to her. The lender was somebody that she had chosen, even though I suggested that, I do have a list of preferred lenders that I have worked with, that I know.
And we can only advise.
And I trust.
Yeah.
But they had already started the process and felt comfortable with the lender. So we are now like probably 10 or 11 days into the deal, and the lender has not responded to them at all. They have a copy of the contract because I sent it, but they are not responding. The clock is ticking because now
are you past due diligence at this point?
We're past due diligence, but we are still in the finance and the appraisal contingencies. And so now I jump in and I start trying to get a hold of the lender. I get ghosted for a couple of days. Finally, I get a hold of the lender, and the lender is like, we can't approve them.
Oh my God.
So now my clients have got, a couple of $1,000s earnest money on the line.
Yeah.
They're going to be homeless because they've already turned in their notice and the clock had been ticking while we were writing these offers. So I call a lender that I've worked with in the past that had, just blown my socks off with deals that she had done for my clients in the past. And I explained the situation. She's like, I'm going to call her right now and let's see what we can do. She calls my client. My client gets everything over to her that day. Wow. The lender calls me back and she says, I think we can do it, but there's some moving parts here and we need an extension. I think we had 5 days left for the appraisal and 5 days left for the finance contingency.
And those are the worst calls to make. Because then the agent's like
freaking out.
And you're like,
what's
no,
going on?
It's fine. Everything's fine. And they're like, well, then why do you need an extension?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we went into the offer with a pre-approval letter from the lender that my client had, already used before we met. So I called the seller. The seller's very hesitant because the seller is also an agent.
Okay.
So,
Which sometimes I love, by the way.
In this situation, she had been burned because, the previous buyer ended up terminating. So she's starting to think the same thing's going to happen. And they have already moved. So, they're ready to close this chapter. So we go ahead, we agree, we get, I want to say, I think we extended for 10 more days.
Oh, wow.
We get the appraiser out there ASAP. The appraisal comes back short. And my clients they don't have any money. They have their down payment and they had their closing costs. And that was it.
Yeah.
So now I have to make another phone call. And
was it very short?
It was about $5,000, but it was enough where if the seller didn't lower the purchase price,
they couldn't move
my
forward.
clients would not have been able to move forward.
Yeah. But 5,000 would be an okay number for a seller to consider. I mean, I've had one that came in like $30,000 below, and they were like, absolutely not.
Yes.
So,
and I have too. This was a lower price point. So it was a condo.
Yeah.
It was like low 200. So $5,000 for that price point, nobody wants to give that money up.
No one ever wants to give money away.
And so we ended up having to go to the seller. And at first they were very, very hesitant.
Yeah.
My client is she's beside herself. Like every time I talk to her, she's literally, in tears at the thought of, if the seller didn't lower the price, we were going to end up, having to start over.
100%.
They had already turned in their notice. So their apartment had already been rented out.
Yeah.
So we finally, were able to work things out with the seller. And, we had to renegotiate a few things in the contract. The seller finally agreed. And we were able to, get the purchase price lowered. The lender was able to get my client underwritten. We did have to extend the closing date from the original closing because she came in, 1/3 of the way in to the deal once we went into contract. My clients were, I remember sitting across the table from them when we were at the closing, and I just remember like her tearing up and saying, like, we would never be here right now if it wasn't for you, holding our hand, and if it wasn't for you making that introduction to the lender.
Yeah, and putting the right people in their life to help them get to the closing table.
And so the coolest part of this story is, fast forward, my clients have been in this condo, for a little over 2 years. We've stayed in contact. I stay in contact with all of my clients. And
that's what makes you so amazing.
Yes. So in November, I hosted my annual client appreciation event, and I invite all my past clients. And, this client and her hubby came, and we were just chatting at the event. She was like, so what's going on in the market? And, talked a little bit about what was going on in the market. And she was like, we're thinking about getting something a little bit bigger. And I was like, okay, awesome. That, the condo was, a small condo.
Yeah.
But perfect to get them out of an apartment and paying somebody else's mortgage and into, an equity building asset.
Yeah.
And so she said, well, just, go ahead and, just for fun, run a CMA. I'm like, absolutely. I'll get it over to you tomorrow. Got it over to them. And she was pretty surprised at the number because now, quite a few deals.
And they purchased in 2020.
They purchased, it was like November of 2020.
Okay.
So it was.
Fast forward, this was in 23 that they went?
Yes, 23.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, so they'd been in like almost 3 years.
No, I mean, equity.
So, yeah, quite a few properties had closed in their complex. And she said, okay, we're going to think about this. And we talked about, if you are thinking about selling and buying, because their goal they would have to buy. So now they would have to be that buy, sell transaction.
And it takes you back to that moment.
Yes. With
20 years ago.
With my personal, yes. So I explained to them, that in their situation, the best time to sell and buy would be before the craziness of the spring market. Because again, even though they're going to be buying in a higher price point, that price point that they're buying in now is still the same price point that every single
Right.
buyer coming into the
Yep.
market can afford. So she said, okay, let's get through the holidays, and we're going to talk this through, and we'll just kind of really put some thought into it.
Yeah.
So fast forward, beginning of January, she reaches out to me and she says, we're ready. We want to put it on the market, and we want to do it before the spring market.
Okay.
So she took my advice. I went over, they had done some work to the property since they bought it.
Love that.
They had done, it looked great.
Yeah.
We did a few little tweaks with staging, got my professional photographer out there, and we put it on the market. They got multiple offers. We did end up accepting an offer with a home sale contingency because it worked in my client's favor to buy us a little bit more time for us to go and look at homes.
And we've all been there, submitting offers with contingencies. So it's nice to be on the other side where you're giving another buyer a chance, where their offer is probably not being accepted because it's contingent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, so we got them under contract, and then, we went and we looked, we put a few offers in, and, did not get it accepted. We did put an offer in as a backup. But we decided to continue to look because now the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
We don't have 30 days. We have a little bit more because we did accept the contingency.
Right.
And we strategically accepted the contingency because we needed more time. And my clients were flexible that if they, needed to be in short-term accommodation, they could, because it is just the two of them.
Right.
And it's a little bit easier than a whole family.
And the dogs.
So, there was a home that had actually been sitting on the market, so we started to panic, right? After like 2 weeks of looking and, now being the backup, but it not being certain.
Right.
So fast forward, we go out, it's a Tuesday evening. It was actually before daylight savings time. So,
it was dark out.
Things were getting darker earlier. So I pushed them for us to see this one house before it got too dark, because part of my role is to point everything out that I see about the house, inside and outside. Yeah. And so we went to this house. It was actually the second of 3 houses that we looked at, but it was starting to get dusk. I said, let's go look at the outside first. So we did. We went and we looked at the outside, and then we went inside.
Right.
And the home was actually being remodeled. So it was being sold by a company that purchases homes to rent. But this was a home that they were, selling out of their inventory. And, I was a little bit hesitant because, it has been a rental. We didn't really know a full history. And the home looked very different than the pictures in the MLS.
Okay.
Because
better or worse?
Better.
Okay.
Yeah. But it looked like a construction zone. And so, we liked the layout. They had painted the cabinets. We went in the garage. There was boxes with all new appliances. In the driveway, there's a pallet with all new shingles. And so my client's like, we really like the layout of this house, and, price is good. Can you find out what's going on? Like, has it already been sold and now they're doing this for somebody else? I'm like, absolutely. So we leave there. I call the agent on the way to our last showing.
Yeah.
She picks up and she's like, no, the seller is renovating this house and blah, blah, blah. These are all the things they're going to do. So we get to the last home and I'm like, listen, guys, like, I think the house we just left really is the house that we need to put an offer in on.
Yeah.
The MLS pictures do not do it any justice, but they've painted the cabinets. They put granite countertops. They did all new flooring.
They're still going to get an inspection.
Yes, yes.
So, I mean, regardless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because that was my part that I was a little worried about. When you buy from an investor, you don't really know, because there isn't really a story. They don't have a story.
Sometimes there's a lipstick and there's things behind the walls, and you're like,
But you don't know that until you start peeling away the layers of the onion with that lipstick. So I drove home. I remember it was like 8:30. And I went straight to my office and drafted the offer. I told my clients, we cannot sleep on this, because what I saw versus what was in the MLS were two very different products. And the product we saw, if anybody else saw that, they would be jumping at it as well.
Yeah.
So the home was being sold as is. And so that, obviously, you have to explain to your client what that means. They can still have an inspection, but we can't go back
Right.
and negotiate repairs. So we decided to go into it asking for some closing costs right off of the top to protect ourselves. And with an investor, there's no emotion. They are just looking at numbers, and that is how they're making their decisions.
Yeah.
So we went into it and we asked for closing costs right off the top. My client's offer was accepted.
Wow.
They
As the offer was. No
Yes.
counter, no nothing.
No counter.
Okay.
We got 2% in closing costs.
Wow.
Which in this market is
unheard of.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. We asked for a 10-day due diligence, just knowing that there was still some things that needed to be done. And in fact, so after we went binding, the next day I called the listing agent and I said, we're trying to set up our inspection. When is the renovation going to be done? She said, well, it's not going to be done for like 2 more weeks. So I was like, okay, we've got to get in there and inspect, because if there is something major, we have got to terminate before due diligence, because the seller's not going to negotiate. So the listing agent said, you know what, why don't we do this? Why don't you draft an amendment and extend your client's due diligence till after the renovation? That way.
So extend due diligence for another 2 weeks.
Another 2 weeks.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Okay.
So we ended up extending it. I explained it to my client that, instead of them having the inspector go out and then have to pay for him to go back out again,
Right.
because not everything was going to be at
completed.
At a place where everything, because appliances weren't even in at this point.
Yeah.
My clients were thrilled. They couldn't believe that not only did they not have to pay extra for the inspector, but that, we were able to get their due diligence extended.
Yeah.
So the renovation ended up being done 2 days earlier. So we did get our inspector in.
Yeah.
The inspector, his feedback was he had not had such a clean inspection in months.
Don't you love that?
Oh my gosh. So I got there a few minutes before my client. So I have the inspector get there first. Then I go in to just kind of do a temperature check, so that, if there's anything, especially in this situation, because it was being sold as is. And, my clients, again, they're not in a situation where they have thousands of dollars to invest in repairs. So I got there and, I was pleasantly surprised. My clients got there about 5 minutes after me.
Yeah.
And we went through. They were so incredibly happy. Like my client, we haven't closed yet. We actually close next week, but my client.
So you're currently in this situation.
I am currently in this situation.
Wow. So this is going back to 2020.
Yes.
And then, so now how's the buyer on the condo going? Have you guys closed on that?
No. So we're going to close back to back.
Okay.
Because that one had the home sale contingency.
Okay, right.
And we were able in this contract to also have a home sale contingency as one extra layer of protection if something ended up falling through
on the other end.
But they are
incredible.
Yes. So they are clear to close on the buyer that's purchasing their home.
Okay.
We're through all of our contingencies on both homes except the home sale. We have both closings lined up back to back the same day. So my client she texted me earlier this week and she was like, hey, I just, what's going on? I'm like, nothing, we're waiting on the title to come back from the attorney. But that's pretty much it at this point. And she was like, I feel like this transaction has been so different from our experience before. She was like, Toni, I want you to know that we will never use another agent ever again. You are going to be our realtor for life. And, that, we haven't even closed, but it's such a rewarding experience.
And that's what we work so hard for, is to become someone's family's forever realtor.
Yes.
And we have to do the most and go the extra mile for us to earn that title of family
Absolutely.
realtor, you
And
know?
it is,
Yeah.
it's going the extra mile. It's getting your hands dirty when you need to get them dirty,
Yeah.
but it's also like making them feel that everything is progressing how it's supposed to, because there's nothing worse than, having that anxiety, like, what could happen, what could fall apart. And that's kind of how
Yeah.
my client was feeling. When she reached out earlier this week, she had a little bit of PTSD from the previous transaction, which is
Totally
completely
normal.
normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she was like, I can't believe that it's so smooth. And so literally the next day I emailed her and I said, the title is back. It's
Oh my
good.
God.
We are just, we're on
Oh my
autopilot.
God. It's
So
and it's funny because we go through so much like trauma that when we go through these transactions, we're kind of like prepared. Like if
yes,
something happens, it's like we've got our armor, and then when we get to the closing table and we didn't have to use our gear, we're like, all right,
yes, you can kind of
like
relax.
we good? We close?
Yeah. And it's true,
Yeah.
like we do have to, like you said, have all this armor and all this ammunition to be able to use to fight for our clients
Yeah.
when it is necessary. And that's the thing. People are always going to remember, how you went the extra mile or how you fought for them. And when they are, fast forward celebrating their 1 month anniversary in that home, or their 1 year or their 5 year anniversary in that home, hopefully
Yeah.
they will, reflect back and think to, how you helped get them in that
Yeah.
home.
And I think the key word is we fought for them. They
Yeah.
had someone advocating for them through everything, whether it was a hard deal, an easy deal. They had someone taking care of business so that they can go to work, take care of the kids. If they're selling the house, doing their, whatever it is,
Absolutely.
they don't have to worry about this. And they have us to take care of it all.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. If, you had, a health scare in your life and you went to a doctor, you are going to put, your health and your faith and your trust in that professional to help you get through this, journey or challenge in your life.
Yeah.
The same applies, when you're buying a home. This is your biggest, usually financial decision or purchase that you are going to make at that time in your life. And obviously, if you buy and sell, multiple homes through the course of your life, usually each one of those deals is bigger than the next. And
brings its own set of challenges.
Yes. And I could never imagine having to navigate that without a professional by my side, because it is more than just opening doors for somebody and then, showing up at the, closing attorneys, with a gift for your client. There are, 1,000 different steps from start to finish. In fact, I came across an article the other day. 90 steps or 90 tasks that your buyer's agent does for you between like your initial meeting with them and then closing the deal. And I'm sure there's a lot.
And it's only 90?
It was only 90, but I'm sure there's a lot, like when I read through it, I was like, well, I could probably add a couple more to this list. But to think about it, 90 different tasks that need to happen, for a smooth and successful transaction, that's a lot of steps. That is a lot of steps that need to happen.
And, I think just to summarize it all, everything we do for our clients, it's for them really. And I know that based on what, the story that you just mentioned, your client had a little bit of PTSD. So we could only shield them from so much. But I think at the end of the day, it's for them to go through this process without being completely traumatized. And I actually was talking to Carrie about this in the one interview that we were doing. We're sort of traumatized, but we want to make sure our clients are not traumatized and that they had a really, as good as it can be through a challenging transaction, a good experience.
And some of that trauma that we deal with, we don't even share with our clients if it is not necessary and it is only going to, cause additional stress and anxiety. That trauma and stress is is not necessary to be shared with
So
them.
it's so funny that you say that, because I recently had a transaction and the other agent, I'm not going to go too much into it, it wasn't vibing. Okay, let's put it that way. Rude, all of that. And so from my end, it was just a nightmare dealing with this particular agent. And my client had no clue. So every single time they came to me like, oh, could you ask if we can do this? I'm like, sure.
I know.
So we do shield them from things that have nothing to do with them. Like, it had nothing to do, like, for me to tell them about this agent,
It would
for
just
what? It would just upset
exactly.
them.
And then
So yeah.
and then your client kind of has that perception, and it can escalate very, very quickly.
For sure.
So I always, whether it is a fantastic agent or an agent that
Yeah.
I'm not vibing with, I try to stay as neutral as possible and just remember, that the objective is, if my client has an ask or a need or a request, I'm going to present it the exact same way that I would, regardless of, who it is that I'm working with on the other end.
100%. And with all that being said, our profession is super demanding. So what do you do to get some clarity out of all the craziness and the good, the bad? It's just, we're on the road all day, staging houses, going from that house to this house, getting a call, have to go here. Where do you find clarity? What do you do for yourself?
Yeah. So, I'm a big homebody. So when I'm not working, I do like being at home. So, a guilty pleasure is reality TV.
Okay.
I do have some of my favorite shows,
Yes.
and those I will usually watch late at night when I'm unwinding and by myself, because nobody else in my family enjoys the mindless enjoyment that I get out of reality TV. But in the summer, as a family, we love going to the lake. We love, going to the beach. We will take at least, 1 or 2 vacations a year.
Nice.
We'll go to the beach. I usually have my laptop and my phone and all my files with me, because there's never really a time in real estate that we are completely unplugged. Even when I have gone home to visit my family, I'm working, and, I have my computer, my client files, my, iPhone is fantastic for, being able to work and be on the go. And then we enjoy, trying new restaurants as a family. And then I just love spending time with friends and family. I probably don't spend enough time with friends and family, but the times that I do are always, really special and very enjoyable. It is definitely quality time instead of quantity time.
Oh, for sure. So, you find solace within the family life, which is beautiful. Like, you're so lucky that you get to have that as your, not your escape, but that, just to get away from all of it.
Absolutely.
To enjoy family time. Not a lot of people have that in this business. They find solace in other ways or whatever. So that's really beautiful. And my question is, do you turn your phone off at any time? Do you have like a work-life balance?
Never. No, I don't. And it's probably not healthy, but
not really.
I let my clients know when they choose to hire me, I am available 24/7 to them.
Yeah.
And I stand behind that promise, and it is not, I have had calls at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, when a due diligence is expiring and we are not really through negotiations, but it's very rare that anybody truly takes me up on that offer.
Yeah.
I did recently have a transaction where I was representing the seller. And her and her husband were living in 2 different time zones. So that was a little tricky because, I was here, and then, they were in 2 different time zones. So that was fun. But I had to stay mindful because they were behind me. So I had to stay mindful that I wasn't trying to reach out too early in the day, but then I also had to make myself available for later in the evening to be able to field any calls. And, I don't ever turn my phone off. I just, I am a mom and I have kids, And so, I
But when I say
always,
turn the phone off, I don't take calls after
yeah,
6 o'clock, like,
no,
yeah. See,
I'll,
for me, I love calls after 7 because my daughter's asleep, the house is quiet, the day's done, and it's
yeah,
like finally there's silence. So when I get the calls in,
you can really
I can
focus.
sit there with like a
Yeah.
cup of tea and I'm relaxed and we can talk. So when clients ask, "Hey, can I call you at 8:30? I hope it's not too late." I'm like, 8:30 is perfect.
And I feel the same way because I do feel like during the day, we're running around showing
Yeah.
houses at closings, listing appointments, staging, meeting the photographer. And there's
Yeah.
not always enough hours in the day to be able to sit down and just decompress and have that conversation
Yeah.
with your client. So, yeah, some of my best conversations are later on at night when the day is done and now I
Yeah.
can really focus on my client.
And I feel like the clients are also like a little more vulnerable at that hour. So
Yes.
they're open with us. And I always tell them, like, just be open with me. Like, this is a zero judgment zone here because there's
Yes.
lots of personal stories that we deal with
That
and they come
100%.
out and people are really skeptical to share those things with like us. Like, who are we? We're just, in the beginning, we're a stranger.
We are, yes, in the beginning we
Yeah.
are. And sometimes, they are more comfortable probably sharing with a stranger than they would with a friend or family member.
Yeah.
But a little story that I have to share
Yes.
is, in the very beginning of my career, I answered my phone one night. It was actually a lead, and it was 11:30 p.m. my time. So I claimed the lead, thinking that it would just go to voicemail.
Sure.
Right. And about 30 seconds later, my phone rings because, it's the little auto dialer. And the person was on the other end. Well, they lived in California. So it was 8:30 p.m.
Okay.
for them. It was 11:30 p.m. for me. I was very surprised because I wasn't expecting this phone
And you're like,
call.
hello.
But I was wide awake and I was like, I'm going to claim this lead.
Yeah.
It's an area that I work in. How exciting. And if I had not answered my phone, I would never have met my client, who has turned into being an incredibly dear friend of mine. She has done 3 deals with me.
Wow.
She has referred me to her daughter, and she has referred me to numerous friends of hers. So if I had not answered my phone or claimed that lead and answered the phone at 11:30 p.m. that night, I would never have met her. And, I have to say, I'm a firm believer that people come into your life for reasons. And there was a reason that she came into my life that night.
Yeah.
And, I consider her an extension of my family. My family don't live here. So, when I am out and about, and I kind of need to talk to a motherly figure, I reach out to her.
It's so funny because I have such a similar story to you. Not going to share it right now because we're on the clock, but very similar. Became like so close to me, almost like an auntie type of figure.
Especially, in your situation as well, with your mom being so far away.
Yeah.
I do. My clients have become an extension of my family.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to all of them. And
your vibe attracts your tribe.
Yes.
It's what you put out there is what you're attracting. And it's an incredible thing because I know that both of us have met amazing clients that have turned into such good friends. And it wasn't even like refer me out. It completely separated from, real estate and went into this beautiful friendship.
And I don't, as a rule of thumb, ask my clients for referrals.
No.
I do not ask them for referrals. Yeah. I feel that if they were happy with how I made them feel in their transaction, they will organically refer me. And if they don't, that's okay.
Oh, I mean,
but
yeah.
I don't ever ask, as a general rule of thumb, I don't ask for my clients to refer me. I feel like it puts them on the spot, and it's not who I am.
It needs to be organic.
Yes.
So if someone's talking real estate and they're like, oh, I know, great real estate agent. What's your why?
My why is my family. my why is my family. I do this because I want to be able to just give them all the things that, I never had growing up. I want to be able to leave a legacy for my kids. And I want for them to learn at a young age
Yeah.
how you can build wealth through real estate and home ownership. And that's my why. That's my biggest why.
So whenever you go through a tough situation, whether it's with a client or an agent or this or that, and it could be completely separated, from real estate, do you go back to your why
Always.
to get you through whatever
Always.
it is that you're going through?
All the time. And at the beginning of every year, when I'm sitting down and I'm looking at, my goals for the year and how many families I want to help, I always revisit that why.
Yeah.
I always revisit it. But yeah, the tough times, I do ultimately look back, okay, we're going to get through this. We've only got 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
Or we've only got 2 more days. But, and to see, my kids are older now. They are 18 and almost 17. And it's really cool. My son especially, he will always say, after I have a difficult transaction, Mom, it's okay. They're so lucky they have
because they
you.
know they've been with you. I mean, they've been through this with you for all these years.
Yeah, and it is, for as young as he is to, he's like, it's okay, Mom. And, to have that little cheerleader
Yeah.
that, it just kind of reinforces that why. Because I'm doing this, for my kids. And to have them, say, well done, or,
Of course, you want your kids to be proud of you.
Exactly.
We all want our kids to be proud of us. We want to be the best that we can be and do the best that we can as parents and
100%.
leave a legacy,
Yeah.
if that happens. And just to wrap up, tell us 3 fun facts about you.
Oh gosh.
And it could be anything. It can be like, I love chocolate fondue. I don't know. It can be
Okay.
anything.
So I love Cadbury's chocolate,
Okay.
specifically their Whispers from
Which
South Africa.
Are those
They're
with, like, the
kind of
holes
like
in it?
they're the ones with like the honeycomb.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Is it like a crunch?
Kind of, but
Those are-
they're kind of like malt balls,
Oh my.
but they have the honeycomb in them.
Okay.
So when you go back home, you need to bring me some back.
I
That's my
definitely
one
will.
thing that I always like.
Okay.
Everybody gets a list, and it's usually just
So to
Cadbury's
make Toni
chocolate.
happy, we need to give her
Yes.
the Cadbury chocolate bar.
Yes,
Okay.
or peppermint crisp.
Oh my
I
gosh.
love my peppermint crisp as well. So that would be one fun
Okay.
fact, and no other chocolate really compares.
Okay.
Like,
I'm with you.
I feel like South
I
African
totally
chocolate-
understand the
yes.
chocolate, levels.
I could never be a vegetarian, even though I have considered it in my life because I love biltong too much. Even though I don't have it until I go home.
And biltong is beef jerky.
Yes.
But there's no preservatives. It's
Yes.
just dried naturally
with
salts
spices and yes.
I forgot what the
seasonings and
yeah,
spices.
like all the seasonings, and it is to die for. I mean, I can eat it for literally breakfast,
Yes.
lunch, and dinner, like
So
full protein.
When I go back home, whoever picks me up from the airport brings me biltong and a bowl of water.
If it doesn't get swiped through customs.
Well, when they come to pick me up, yes, when I go over there,
yeah.
it's gotten swiped out of my bag here in customs before, so I don't bring it home. And then the third thing is, I love my fur babies, and sometimes my kids think I like them better than I like my kids, and sometimes that's true.
Oh, because they don't speak back.
They don't speak back. Yeah. Unconditional love.
Absolutely.
Yes.
My daughter feels the same way about our dogs. She's like, you always give them tummy tickles. And I'm like, well,
I know.
You're one of the greats in our business.
Thank you, Shannon.
I look up to you so much. I think you are not just an amazing real estate agent. I think you're an incredible person. You have a beautiful soul.
Well, I appreciate
every
that.
room you go into, I feel everyone just loves you. You just have this aura that you give off that I immediately felt. We've known each other for a few years now.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for being here today and for taking the time out of your very busy schedule.
You are welcome. And thank you for having me. And I have to say, I feel the same way about you.
Thank you.
You are just an utter professional, and you really make things look flawless. and I look up to you just as much.
Thank you.
So thank you for having me today.
Well, that is Real Talk Thursdays. Thank you for joining. Bye.
Bye.